91. We are into June, first Friday of the month. That means we get a visit from Marshfield Mayor Lois TeStrake in here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you today?
Good. And as we were, as you know, if you're listening to us live, if you're watching us in video, a reminder that this is Dairy Fest weekend. And now your first breakfast this morning went out there as the mayor. How did that go?
It was fabulous. Got there at 5 a.m. and I left about a quarter after 9, and the line was still out about, oh gosh, a lot of feet. Yeah, it was fabulous. So many people came out, and it was so much fun to see people, meet more people. It was just fabulous. I have to say it.
You're in your glory in those elements of this job, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And I just absolutely, oh yeah, I'll cheese around it.
Did they put you on any duties? Did you get to stir eggs or anything?
Actually, I got to serve eggs,
Oh.
which was interesting. Unfortunately, about 4 times out, the burners kept going out because of the wind.
Yeah.
So finally, they put some tarps around it. So people stood there for probably almost 25 minutes waiting for eggs. But you know the best part about Marshfield? I only heard one person that was a little negative. Otherwise, everyone else said, we just stand here and talk to people. We get to meet more people. One guy was standing next to this guy, and he says, where do you live? And he told him his address. I'm your neighbor next door. I've lived here for 10 years. I had no idea. So you know what? Things work out because they're supposed to. And how great. Just fun, definitely.
It's going to be an attempt here at Dairy Fest weekend after pandemic, so hoping crowds will come back from everything we saw on Memorial Day weekend up north. People are ready to do that, and sometimes it's the only downside is the report this morning, and again, you're watching us here in the future, the gas prices, because people are buying, because people are using gas. Now the gas price is continuing high because demand is up. So we'll see how that works out through the summer. But
you know, Jeff, this is such a wonderful community all year round. But things like Dairy Fest and Hub City Days and the Central Wisconsin State Fair and all those types of activities, what you really can tell it's special. People show up, they talk, they're friends and neighbors, and it's just a great feeling.
Talking with Mayor Lois TeStrake, City Administrator Steve Barg in here this first Friday of the month. It's Dairy Fest weekend. If you're watching us in sometime in the future here on video, it could be on Channel 989. It could be on the Marshfield City website. You can link to MFLD TV. It'll take you to some of their videos, and also you could see it on the YouTube channel that they have. So you can consume us many ways, but I say that because some of the activities that we're going to talk about here are already in the past, and I'm hoping it doesn't rain. By the time you see this, you'll know whether it did or not. It's always that chance you take in June. And the dairy breakfast every weekend, you know, whether or not around the area somewhere there's going to be some rainfall. And there have been some years when it wasn't as pleasant as others, that's for sure. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of people. You know, this fest planning will start all over again as soon as this one's over.
Correct. Yeah. Monday morning, they'll start planning for next year. They got to get all their ducks in a row and everything to make it work. And yes, and that's how it works. I've been with many planning committees, and that's what you need to do to get everything that happens. And of course, pandemic forced a lot of things to change. But you know the best thing, and again, Marshfield, we've been able to embrace this. Even when we couldn't have Hub City Days, things still went on. So that, I mean, kudos to Marshfield. I just keep saying that because it's true.
Yeah, we were making something out of nothing there for a while. Yeah. I mean, whenever you could, outdoors, you could do some things, at least according to the health department, and stay safe. But now that people are back, they're coming back with droves, like you said, talking to each other to the point where they've seen what it's like not to.
Yeah.
And not to be able to.
Yeah, I think there's pent-up demand for these kind of activities, and people just love it all the time. But when you go a year or two without it, then people really, like you said, embrace it even more.
So hopefully businesses will be back, spending is up, things like that. How's the city spending doing? Are we keeping on budget?
Yeah, I think we've been able to. I haven't done a deep dive into that, but I think we're doing pretty well on budget. One of the things we've benefited from, which we don't want to benefit from, actually, is positions we haven't been able to refill. There's been cost savings there, but along with that, though, I think, Jeff, you're alluding to the increasing gas prices and everything that comes with it, supplies. Anybody who goes to the grocery store and other places knows that the costs are up, and we're feeling some of that too. I'll be looking forward to, at the end of 6 months, getting a report on what the first half of 2022 has looked like.
There is room. I mean, there's a little expansion room in there and to allow for some things. I mean, you give department heads a budget to stay under, but there's some petty cash, so to speak, things that you need to go get once in a while.
Yeah, we have contingency, which means that's something we can tap into. We normally try not to do that for normal operations. That's usually money set aside for those things you just don't expect. Equipment breaks down that needs to be replaced. Costs have to be incurred that you didn't plan on the previous fall. But there's some fudge room there for the overruns. And we never quite know what, for example, gas prices are going to be, so we tend to estimate maybe a little bit higher just to give ourselves a buffer.
I see trucks running around with the city of Marshfield on them. Some of them seem to be fairly new, so we've been able to get through this bump of when we had a little accounting error, as we talked about in the past 4 or 5 years here. Are we doing okay? Are we recovering from that?
Yeah, we are. We've made great strides, and we're going to be borrowing more money later in the summer, Jeff, and we're looking forward to our conversation with Moody's. They're the ones who set our bond rating. And that's kind of odd to say we're looking forward to that call, because usually you don't. I mean, they grill you pretty hard on your financials and all those kind of things. But we are hopeful to get what's called a negative outlook removed from our bond rating, which means that if you look at our bond rating right now, it looks like if we were to go up or down, the most likely place we would go would be down. And I think that we've made enough strides in the last couple of years where that's going to come off. And we're really hopeful that in the next couple of years, we're going to be able to step back up to the rating we had prior to 2019, which was, I forget those numbers and letters, but I think it's a AA1.
There are times when, as homeowners, we think borrowing is a bad thing, but as a public entity, not always. It gets you, when I went to get a car loan when I was young, they said, we won't give you any money because you don't owe any. I said, well, that makes no sense. I have the ability to pay it back, but you don't have a credit history. So,
True, and what you don't want to be doing is borrowing for short-term obligations. But when we borrow for a street that's going to last, 30 or 40 years or more, that's an investment, and that's something that I think people expect. That, we can't pay for all that at one time anyway.
Now, you've delved into the 5-year plan, capital improvement programs here recently?
We did, and we had 2 meetings with Lois and the council on May 5th and May 19th. Good sessions. We walked through all the projects, everything from airport, I was going to say A to Z. I don't think we have the zoo, I guess, is a Z. I don't know. Trying to think what the Z would be, but and went through all the things in the next 5 years, and looking at a total of about $20 million in borrowing over those 5 years. And I know that sounds like a big number, but it's not uncommon for us to borrow upwards of $4 million a year, mostly for streets, but also for improvements to our buildings and facilities. The big one that was being changed by the council is Wenzel Family Plaza. When we built that, we really wish we would have put or could have put permanent bathrooms there. But really, the cost of that, it's way more than people think. It's upwards of $250,000, which I know some people wonder, how can it cost $250,000 to build bathrooms? But you look at the construction type, the concrete block, and the way it has to be done. So we weren't able to do that when we put the plaza in. But we had it in the plan for 2025, and I'm forgetting, maybe Lois will remember which member of the council brought it up first. It might have been Natasha Tompkins.
Yes.
But said, what, is there some way we can move that up? I mean, people love it, but, their kids get wet in the water facility and all this stuff, and, you need permanent bathrooms. So we moved that up from 25 to 23 and shuffled some other projects around to make room for that. And I think that was a good decision. I do. I think it's the next step in that facility is having permanent restroom facilities.
That was, at the time, a big discussion point with the council at that time, whether or not you should, but there was a lot of private funds that went into that. There was an argument that we had Columbia Park. Why do we need Wenzel Plaza? We're trying to be like Wausau, and all kinds of things that were brought up at the time. And in order to keep the costs down and the taxpayers happy, keep the natives from getting restless here, we decided that we were going to put that off, but it was never off the table totally, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it was always thought that we would come back and do it someday, and for the time being, we would do portable facilities for things like concerts and festivals and activities occurring out there, and that's fine. I mean, we bring those out and then we take them back or have them taken back. But as it grows in popularity and success and just builds momentum, you really want permanent facilities. Well,
there's probably going to lose some parking then, unless there's some place that you can put that's...
I haven't looked at where that would be intended to go. I guess I need to dive into that one a little bit. I hope that's not the case, because parking is kind of at a premium in that portion of downtown. But I think we expected this to happen, so I need to talk to the folks who are more directly involved in that to see what, if any, negative implications could come from it.
You could put it up on a second story, but then you're not ADA compliant.
I don't think you'll be seeing that happen, Jeff.
Well, put it over the parking, second floor bathrooms, but then people can't get up there.
But you know what the big takeaway is, and I think Lois will echo this, in fact, I'm pretty sure she will, is that we've got enough excitement, enthusiasm, and favorable comments about that plaza and the use of it that we are talking about speeding up the implementation of the bathroom project. I mean, isn't it great that people are saying, can't we get to that next phase? If it were a flop, we wouldn't be talking about permanent bathrooms at all. We'd be talking about why we did this in the first place. That's not what's happening. Believe me, it's very popular.
I was on the Main Street Board 17 years, and the whole time I was on there, we kept hoping we were going to get a park downtown, something. Our original thought was Main Street. There was an area that we could have done, but as it came to fruition, the side street probably is better because people driving down Main Street maybe will look too closely at the park as they're driving. So it's a little safer off Main Street. We're excited that it came, and as Steve said, that people are so receptive that they want more and they want better. Well, that park is used pretty much all summer. I mean, this is really exciting with all the concerts on Friday nights and stuff happening. They have a yoga thing there on Saturdays and this, and it's amazing how things are working, and we are so proud of that area. I know the first time I walked through there, I looked at all the benches that were in the park. I can't remember 17, 18 benches. Arlie Virch and his wife donated all the benches in that park. So obviously, we know that Marshfield, part of their heart is there too. How great. He just passed away, and we did a little extra tribute for him because of what he did in our hearts and in our minds. So thank you, Arlie and Mrs. Arlie. I mean, just, again, what great people, what great things we can have happening. And it just keeps getting better. 4 new businesses coming into downtown. Wow. I mean, what's better than that, right?
And let me expand on that a little bit. The donation of money, not just the Wenzel Family Plaza, but the library and community center. So many projects at the zoo. I could go all around town and talk about the numerous things that would never have occurred without private donations. This is a very generous community. They're very committed to this town, this city, and wanting to see it move forward. And they're willing to open up their pocketbooks for the good of everyone. And we've seen that time and time again. I've been here 11 years, and I've seen it multiple times myself already.
Well, it's part of making it so that we do have something to offer. We just went through this workforce summit with 6 Chamber of Commerces across the central part of the region here, trying to get a cohesive effort to bring people in here, because there's industrial park room wherever you go. We talked about the city and housing. We're adding to the housing that's available, or the lots that are available for housing. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, we've been criticized in the past for not having lots available in the city, and I've probably said this before on this program with you, Jeff. If people want to live out in the country and they want to have 5-10 acres and have horses, that's great. What we want to do is have land available in the city for those who want to live in the city of Marshfield. And we've struggled. There have been just what we call outlots, or I shouldn't say outlots, sort of those infill lots that are scattered, one here, one there. The ones in each subdivision that didn't get built for some reason. Maybe they had a drainage problem, maybe they're smaller. And we really didn't have many new lots to build on. Well, with Daniel's addition, the one that we did at Lincoln and 5th, that's 23 new single-family lots. The one that Green Tree Construction is working on, that we hope to see come to fruition at 21st and Washington area on the southeast side of the community, that would be maybe up to 55 single-family lots. So we're getting some people interested in housing. We're hearing that there's pent-up demand for housing, despite the inflation that people are experiencing, and we want to be able to provide it.
Building materials was a downside for a long time. I'm hoping that leveled out a little bit, or we got over the sticker shock one way or the other.
No, I think building materials are still in the category with a lot of other things that are facing that supply chain problem. I've talked to a couple people who are in that world, and they've said it's very difficult to get the materials on time to keep their projects going. That's a national issue, and we can't control that here in Marshfield, but I hope they can get it resolved, because we don't want to see delays based upon material availability.
And that was one of the concerns when we took up 17th Street between Peach and Vine. That part is being done right now as we're talking to you here on video. This is the first weekend in June, and Dairy Fest is underway. And that end of the fairgrounds you can't access from that region by the Round Barn now. You come in on 14th, which is neither here nor there as far as that's concerned, but when it comes to time for the fair, that needs to be taken care of. But when you run into supply chain issues, and all of a sudden you can't get the pipe. You're like, well, we should have ordered that ahead of time. It can be done, and they've been moving right along. It looks like they're doing as well as they can here. We haven't had too much bad weather or heavy rain.
No, and one of the things I want listeners to know, because they might have been out there at the fair, Lois was talking about all the excitement with the Dairy Fest breakfast and everything. They might be wondering, why in the world during Dairy Fest, with the breakfast out there, would we be redoing 17th Street? Why couldn't they have waited until the middle of June to start that project? Well, we have Central Wisconsin State Fair coming up in late August. The project itself takes more than 3 months, so one of those two had to be affected by the project. And we committed ourselves early on to the fact that we wanted that project completely done, the contractor to be able to close it out before we got to the end of August, so that there were no disruptions at all with this year's Central Wisconsin State Fair.
And just at this time, so people know, the other half of that street is going to be done too. They're just working on that part for the fair right now, from Vine to Peach, but then from Vine to Maple, that's going to be done too.
Yeah, that entire stretch is being done, and it'll be a nice new road, greatly improved, and a lot of amenities with it. It's been due for a long time. I know I came here in 2011, and that was on the docket then, and it just keeps getting backed up because of finances. And finally, it's getting to the finish line, and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, well overdue on that one if you're from that area. Give us a call, 384-2192, 384-2192 on today's program here. Let's go to the phone. Good morning. You're on with the mayor.
Good morning. I was interested in your conversation regarding the Wenzel Family Plaza and the restrooms that are being considered to be moved up in the CIP. And that would be a welcome addition, I think, compared to porta potties. But also, the original plans considered a recirculating system for the splash pad, which would have cost a little more up front to put in, but it certainly is adding to our annual costs in fresh water that's being pumped up into the air and then down the drain. And so I'd really like to see a better examination of the costs that we have been paying. I know last summer we didn't have a full season because something had broken on their valve system. But I would like to have a look back to see what the costs have been for that fresh water meter that is associated with that splash pad. And as long as you're considering putting in bathrooms, which would, have a lot of plumbing involved, to look into the possibility of revisiting the recirculating system that was initially considered for the splash pad.
Okay. Thanks for the question and really good comments. Thank you for calling in today. I think that, a lot of things had to be looked at as we tried to get to the finish line of that project to try and stay within our overall budget. We didn't have as much money pulled together as maybe we'd hoped. We thank all the donors who were involved, and so that's why the whole idea of the bathrooms didn't happen initially anyway. I really wasn't greatly involved in the whole issue of whether or not we could do the recirculating system you're talking about with the water feature. And I know we tried it to minimize water use. I think we ought to look at this, you're right, at the end of the year and see how much we've used and if there's a way we can reduce that. We certainly don't want it running when there's nobody around. So we've tried to curtail the hours somewhat of that water feature. But
it is on a timer as it is. But even so, the volumes of water that are involved in its current utilization is considerable, I'm sure, and I'd like to see what those numbers are. I'd like to have those numbers shared, and then do a cost-benefit analysis. Maybe if we're considering putting in bathrooms, while we're digging things up, let's put in the recirculating system that would help save money down the line. If we are indeed spending thousands of dollars of city water, rather than going with what was originally considered to be operating as a recirculating process.
Well, when you first started talking, I thought you were going to question whether or not we should even have put in that water feature, but I'm glad you didn't, because I know that's been a really important amenity for the young families and others who've been out there using it. And I've seen so many times when people are, having picnics while their kids are splashing in that water, and it's so great to see. But your question about the water usage and whether or not that can be curtailed by whether it be equipment or policies or whatever is a really good one. And I'm going to take that forward, and I'll talk to that to the Parks and Recreation Director and others about that and see what we can do. At the very least, I think it's worthwhile, as you said, to have a report on how much water is being used at that facility and whether or not that can be reduced in some way. So I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, 384-2192 is the call here. You can join us as well on today's Insight program. The timeline, you just said that earlier in the show that it was brought up and that we could maybe move that situation up. And now, if you're going to add to the project, it might delay it a little bit in that the project is now of more scope and cost.
Yeah, it will undoubtedly cost more, as it would cost more to do almost anything in 2023 than it would have in 2020 or 2019 or whenever we did that in 2018. But, again, it's just I think about this in my role as a homeowner, and I think many of us are homeowners. Sometimes we just can't afford to do everything that we want to at one time, so we have to, split off a piece of the project and come back to it. And, I wish we were done with it. I wish we weren't even talking about it. I wish that the amenity was there today, but I understand why it wasn't. I was here. I was part of the conversations that said, look, we don't have another $250,000, but we need to get this going. We can't wait any longer. We have donors and others waiting for this to happen. Let's get this project done. So, I'm sure it will cost more than it would have 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, I just want to point that out to listeners and viewers that that's going to back that up a little bit, even though the project has come forward. But it makes sense to do it at the same time, as long as the plumbers are there. And then But then you look at the cost and you say, okay, now if we do the recirculating water in addition to the $250,000 for the bathrooms, now the project cost has gone up. Does it make sense to bring them back and do it at a different time because we can't afford to pay it all at once right now, or it's just a bigger bite to chew, or those are the things that we're looking at, really. I mean, the decisions that need to be made.
I'm sorry, Jeff, I misunderstood where you were going at first. I apologize. You're incorporating the recirculating piece. I think that starts with maybe going back to if there was a study done on how much that would save and what it would cost, and then updating the cost figure to what would the expense be if we put that in now. And look at the cost-benefit analysis. I respect the caller definitely is concerned not only about the expense, but also the environment, the use of our water resources. And it's worth delving into and seeing what we find.
You wouldn't do this in California.
No, very true. Water is important.
They would not allow that to happen, that's for sure, without a recirculator. Give us a call, 384-2192, 384-2192, this first Friday in the month of June here with Mayor Lois TeStrake and City Administrator Steve Barg in for your calls. WDLB's Insight program this first Friday in June. I say that if you're listening live, you know that. If you're watching us on video, though, here with Mayor Lois TeStrake and City Administrator Steve Barg in the office today to talk to you live on the radio here. And we're just visiting about city business and how things go. If you've got a question, 384-2192. Everything from finances is the big thing. It seems like we're kind of in a recovery mode, as we talked earlier in the program here, from some accounting practices that were done a few years back that we've recycled. Is there anything that ever came from this court clerk money situation? $70,000 was the figure bantered around. Is that accurate, and what did that do for us in the city?
Yeah, we have insurance, and we file a claim for that, and we believe we're covered. We don't think we'll be out one penny. So if listeners are wondering about the city taking a bath, that's not going to happen. But it's not something you want to hear come out in the news that your municipal court clerk appears to have taken money from the operation. We're also, I want people to know, putting some steps in. We already have put steps into place to greatly minimize the chance that anything like this could ever happen again. Good policies, procedures, and we're working with anybody from our police department to our auditors to whatever to try and put further controls on to be keeping a handle on this. But as far as our overall finances, I mean, we've come a long ways. We were down to a point where we were at 9% of our annual operating revenues is all we had in our reserve account. And the auditors want you to be between 25 and 30. So they look at 9% not very favorably. We've come back now to where we're about 20%. That's a long climb over 3 years. And we're on the right track. People are satisfied. I think Moody's will be satisfied with our progress. And like I said, I see a couple years out even getting back to the better bond rating that we once held.
Well, we got lucky. We didn't break a leg somewhere in there, so to speak, and use a metaphor, because we didn't have anything that really took us out, where we unexpected expense.
No, very true. Very true. And again, it's hard for people to understand what happened 3 years ago. It wasn't interesting, or it wasn't easy for me to understand at one point what had all transpired. But no monies were taken back in that day. They were misallocated and misappropriated, so that it appeared that our budget was better than it was, and now we're budgeting more soundly. But it's been a road to recovery. But both our financial advisor and our auditor are very satisfied too, in addition to the rating agencies.
We talked earlier, we touched on the capital improvement project. That's a 5-year plan, 5-year look out, right? And you kind of move projects around and see where. Can the public see those on the website?
Yeah, it's out there on the website. It's still called, I think, the recommended plan right now. Council will be seeing this on June 14th, and I think they'll approve it. They've made a couple of changes, not big ones. And then the approved version will be on the website. But people should see this. I mean, it's not just the $20 million that we're borrowing in the next 5 years, but even the money that we use from room tax monies we get that support the parks and the zoo, grants and donations that we get and how they're used. All sorts of things go into how much money we can spend on larger projects. And I think it's good for the average citizen to delve into that. You're not going to understand every line, but at least you know where your tax monies and other monies are going.
Room tax revenue, you touched on that. That was what is being used to fund our, what used to be called the tourism office. Now it's called Visit Marshfield, just as a nice new name. And a lot of other communities have done it as well, so that we fit in with the Visit moniker that's going on. Now, are you revisiting, if you will, that situation or that department?
Yeah, Lois and the council just got a chance to look at and ultimately approve a new agreement with Visit Marshfield. Matt McLean, as executive director, Al Cheney, the president, the entire board, they do a great job of bringing people to this community for all sorts of conferences and whatever. They're involved in sports tourism that brings people here. But yeah, they get 70% of the room tax dollars that are paid into our lodging facilities. The city keeps the other 30%. For improvements basically to the parks and the zoo and the trails, which is good for us too. But we're trying to form a tighter bond. So the new 4-year agreement we just passed, that'll run from July 1st, into 2026, calls for more communication between the council and the board of Visit Marshfield, and just making sure that we're in sync on priorities where we can be. And I think it's a good document. I think it's a good contract that we've given a blessing to. It'll be a long-term relationship now going forward.
Were there any problems? I know WASA had a problem with their situation between their tourism director, if you will, and monies being brought to the council to the point where they actually dissolved it at one point and now brought it back again because it's a good thing. I mean, it has to be done some way, but what's your take on what's happening here? There
have been past councils, and this obviously predates Lois, but where people have raised questions about how Visit Marshfield spends some of its monies. The kinds of things they're trying to bring to town, are they effective in doing that? Are they working on projects that some of the city council members might look at cross-eyed? But I think what we're trying to do now is say, look, here's the priorities that have been outlined by the city, and at least make sure that Visit Marshfield is trying to plug into those where they can. Some of their things have nothing to do with us, and that's great. And like I said, they do a wonderful job, but that we can collaborate where possible.
All right, let's go to the phone. Good morning. You're on the Insight program.
Yes, I have two questions. This is probably not even the right program or anything, but I was at the Memorial Day Parade, and I did not see the fire trucks, the ambulance, and God knows maybe they were called out someplace else. And I did not see the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts. And that's my first question. And my second question is, and I will be listening to the radio for the comments, what is Marshall doing to prevent school shootings? I will listen to the radio. Thank you.
Okay. I think there were scouts in the parade. I think that's mostly what it was.
Yeah, I wasn't in town. I didn't make it to the parade. I was out of town last weekend. And as far as the fire and police vehicles, I don't know that there was a conscious effort not to be there. I think historically we've participated in that, but like I said, I don't really know.
I was already up at the cemetery, so I honestly cannot tell you, because I did not watch the parade, because I was part of the whole genre of the program. So I apologize that I did not even realize, but I did see some Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, I'm pretty sure, and maybe they just came to the event as opposed to marching in the parade. Obviously, tomorrow you'll see fire trucks and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in the parade. And I apologize if we've done this in the past and did not do it this year. I'm actually not from Marshfield originally. I've always been in the Stratford Parade because that's where I'm from. So the VFW Auxiliary, I represent there. But now, of course, Marshfield, as the mayor, I represent the city of Marshfield. So I will watch next year to see if the fire trucks are there and the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. But again, a lot of people maybe were out of town, and sometimes it's hard to get a group together. I know the one year when they had a parade, they only had 4 Girl Scouts and 6 Boy Scouts. But it was really cute because they marched together. So they made it a collaborative effort, which again is what we want to try to do in Marshfield. So again, I apologize if you didn't see them in the parade, but I know that some of them were up at the cemetery. And again, as far as the fire trucks, we'll have to ask Mr. Fletty. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking out loud. I answered first to the caller, but now reflecting, I'm gone a lot on Memorial Day weekend. My mother-in-law lives in Oshkosh, and that's typically a weekend that my wife and I go spend that weekend with her. So I haven't really been at the parade very often. I can't say that I know whether the police and fire vehicles are even there normally. I think the caller is suggesting that historically they have been, but I'll certainly be willing to ask.
The city doesn't plan this. Was it the chamber that plans Dairy Fest?
Right.
So
yes,
the Memorial Day is a Veterans Council.
Correct.
They take care of that,
Right.
So they would be the people to ask.
Correct.
Right. Yep.
Correct. I can jump in on the school shooting thing, though. I know there's been a lot of, obviously, angst over what happened in Texas, and it's hardly the first time we've seen this occur in the past couple of decades. It's a troubling thing, obviously, to see young children go through that and a whole community just suffer so painfully. I can tell you this, that there's good communications and good working relationship between our police department and the school district here. We have an emergency planning team that has done both mock disasters, tabletop as we call them, where you just kind of simulate them in the fire station, and actually field drills. It was 4 or 5 years ago, Jeff, that we had an active shooter drill where I participated. We were out in the field. I forget which school we were at, but we were simulating, and we had officers running down the hallways, looking to save children. We were testing out the equipment. Did the radios communicate from inside the building well to the dispatchers? So we try to prepare for these incidents, and I know that our police department and fire department speak regularly with Ryan Christensen, the superintendent of schools, and others. I think this will only strengthen it more. I assume that since what happened in Texas a couple weeks ago, we're hearing even more conversations going on at those parties. I'm just not privy to them. But the caller raises a good point. We need to try whatever we can do to be ready for those kind of tragic situations.
Well, having talked with police on this program and Sheriff's Department too, I know that they do those things. The Sheriff's Department certainly at the courthouse, and the previous police chiefs here at Marshfield have done drills and things like that. The 2020 hindsight that goes on with this, the Monday morning quarterbacking, they should have went in. They didn't go in soon enough. Who gave the orders? And everybody's pointing fingers about why things went what some people seem so horribly wrong. When you're standing there, even if you have a vest on and you're going to walk into gunfire, you tell me how fast you're going to run, I mean, you can be cowboy all day long, but let's be real. And for the people who are parents, maybe they would. It's a whole different thing when it's yours that's being destroyed. But that kind of thing, you just don't know until the time comes. And the decisions that were made will be answered for. And the rest of I can tell you that there are memos and flyers that go out to police and law enforcement nationwide that will have a thick book that will recap everything that happened. And our department will take a look at that and plan accordingly to what are the right decisions at the time. All this second guessing that goes on will not be for naught.
Yeah, and that's all true. And I can tell the caller, though, without getting specific, because I don't know all the specifics, that there's an ongoing discussion between our police department and the school system. And there was before this, and there will be after this. That doesn't mean we're going to be able to prevent everything. But the days of people thought that a city like Marshfield, this could never happen in here. We're not big enough. We're not in the part of the country where these happen. Everybody's way beyond that. This could happen in any city in America. And we do drills, we do meetings, we do all those kind of things to prepare as best we can.
Talking with City Administrator Steve Barg and Marshfield Mayor Lois TeStrake. You can too, live here on WDLB this first Friday in June, 384-2192, 384-2192. Let's go to the phone line. Good morning. You're on the Insight program.
Thank you. I have a question where the Wenzel Plaza is on Chestnut there. I'm seeing people making U-turns continually, and I'm questioning if there would not be a best thing would be to have no U-turns in that area because of the traffic that's there and the people on events and that. I see people making U-turns there all the time, and I find it to be unsafe at times, and I think we're waiting for an accident to happen there.
Can I catch you while you're still on the phone?
Yes.
Okay. Can you be specific? Are there certain parts of the streets around Wenzel Family Plaza, certain intersections that you're seeing this happen more than others?
On Chestnut, in front of the post office, it is something else there. If you watch or observe at all, there's always U-turns. People are pulling out and making U-turns. So probably within that block from a couple blocks there where I find it very hazardous, and I think what are we waiting for, to have an accident before anything is done about that?
We have a meeting regularly of our staff leaders, the department and division heads, so I'm with the police chief and the public works superintendents and all those folks, and I will bring this up. Absolutely, this needs to be at least looked at. I don't know if we need to do a study to see, how much it's happening and when it's happening, but I'll definitely make sure that we look at it.
And I'm going to add to that. Thank you for calling in and bringing that to our attention. We as a city cannot know everything that's happening, and as I ran for mayor, this is my first time in public office, and I want to learn right the first time. And people like you bringing calls in and bringing it to our attention, thank you so much, because this brings just one more piece of the puzzle to Marshfield. And you know what? I most agree with you. That is a hazard. And one of these days, some little kid's going to run out, or even an adult going to run out in the road, and someone's going to do a big UE. And so I'm hoping that we can make this happen, because that sounds great. Thank you very much for the call, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, I commend you too for calling in and letting us know about this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. 384-2192. You can join in 384-2192 as well here. That's a tough spot. You got a lot of, whenever you have pedestrians, you have people on their feet. At the fair, they're on the midway. They're not walking down the sidewalk. Whenever somebody's walking down the sidewalk, there's a chance that people can dart out. And when I heard the number of pedestrian accidents on the news here the other day, I thought, holy cow, I didn't realize that there were that many people that got hit by cars. And pointed out, talking with Chief of Police here the last show, this topic came up, and he said, well, they're not illegal. You can do a U-turn on Central Avenue. If it's a posted area, you'll see a sign that says no U-turn. Otherwise,
correct.
It is legal to do. It might not be best practice, but it is legal to do. But when you have a lot of people around, how many people dart out? He mentioned jaywalking. He said there is no such thing anymore. You don't have to stay in the crosswalk, but if you're not, then it's on you. You know, the people who are going to get the citation is you.
It's going to be you
not
as the
driver.
jaywalker. Correct.
The
right.
driver is driving in his lane. You are in his lane. When you're in the crosswalk, he's in your lane, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's where the difference lies. It's not illegal, but it's not good practice because you're at fault.
Yeah, and whenever I've seen when there's events there, people drive down and they do gawking, which is fine. They look over what's going on? Oh, what's happening there? And they maybe aren't doing their best driving behavior anyway. So that's any safety thing we can look at. Yeah, I know what you're saying about U-turns, but we need to at least talk about it.
You can call us 384-2192 on today's Insight program this first Friday of the month, 384-2192. In retrospect of council meeting, I heard something about, and we talked about this before, Marshfield Mall on your weekly program here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really exciting prospect. I think some people have heard about it. I think quite a few have now. That Ned Brickman of Midland Management came to a council meeting about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. I'm losing track of time, but and brought forth an idea of really changing the model from a mall to a series of connected buildings, more like you might see in Plover or Rib Mountain. And he's got some retailers that are very interested, that are showing a commitment on their part to come here if that can all be worked out. He refers to them sometimes as mid-level retailers, which means, it's not going to be Macy's or whatever, but there are some people that I think it would be really appreciated here in Marshfield. So he's trying to put together a package of investors, and he's actually come to the city. He's looking for us to be, a part of his package too. And so the council's had a couple closed session meetings. I think we'll have another one on June 14th, trying to see if we can find a way to help make this happen. And the council and Lois are doing their due diligence by being, scrutinizing what's going on. But I think everybody would like to ideally see more retail shopping here. It would keep people from feeling like they needed to drive to Wausau or somewhere else on weekends. And as I always say, if they don't drive to Wausau to go to their favorite store, while they're here and they stay here on Saturday, they're going to go eat here, they're going to go shop here, they're going to buy gas here, all the things that they would otherwise do in Wausau or Eau Claire if we don't have those shopping opportunities. So hopefully it will come to pass. We'll wait and see probably in the next couple months if it's going to be something that's happening. But a lot of people are interested and excited about it, and I see why.
Any kind of retail at this point in time would be wonderful in the city because it was a big, I don't know if we fully understood the ramifications of Yonkers, Penny's, Shopko. Those three stores right there took a lot out of this city, shutting all of them down, and they're not coming back, as you can see. Harbor Freight took part of the Yonkers, and they put the door to the outside. Right. I looked inside and said, well, where are they going? Well, they only used part of it, and then they turned it to the outside, and that's what's going to happen there, is that the doors will be to the outside.
Correct.
Now, I've talked on this program for years. I guess I'm geezer. I don't understand. It seems to me that the indoor mall concept of being in where it's climate controlled instead of having to go in and out in the wintertime seems like a better idea to me. But the retail studies show people don't walk by other stores to get to stores. They want to get out, go in, and it's what I used to call the male model. Men go to the store, they get what they want, and they leave. They don't shop. They don't walk around and look for shoes. They don't want work shoes. They go where the work shoes are, and they get the work shoes, and they go home. They go to Fleet, they get their jeans and their work pants, and they go home. They don't shop, and now nobody does.
Yeah,
because of the internet. That's where they're shopping. That's where they're looking at things, and then they'll go and buy it or see it down in the brick and mortar store. So the concept has changed. That left me behind. The world of shopping changed, and I was still in the old mode yet, where I was walking around what we used to talk to my granddaughter about window shopping.
Yeah.
She says, what? And then I explain it to her. She goes, why?
Well, and things do have to come back around, and they always do revisit, even fashions when you think about it. That old coat you have 20 years ago is back in style now. So as the malls, like Steve said, it's going to be more like Plover and the Rib Mountain area. Things need to change back around. The malls will come back again someday, who knows when. The thing that I'm the most concerned about is like the Mall of America, because that is a huge entity. I mean, you think about, there's no way that they can make that a store, like you said, you're going to get a pair of shoes and come out, because it's 4 stories, and there's so much going on there, unless they have outside elevators on each floor, which is probably not going to happen. So yeah, but again, everything is revisited, which is interesting about history.
And let me say something. There might be people listening to us right now. We know there are. We've been getting calls all the time over here, but and wondering, wait a minute. What Mr. Barg is talking about is the city investing some dollars into this project. Now, I'm a taxpayer here. I want you to know that to the degree that the city would participate in this at all, and I can't talk about that specifically on this program, but it would be through tax increment financing. And without doing a deep dive into what that means, it's basically saying, look, whatever we would be part of in this project, we would recoup from the additional growth. If the tax base goes up, we would get every cent of the tax rate increase until we paid off whatever debt that we incurred. So, there's protections and securities and so forth. So it's not us being flippant with anybody's money. It's us using a mechanism that's used all across Wisconsin prudently, if we do this, to spur on development.
And the storage areas that are being built, it just tells you how much stuff people have.
Correct.
And I didn't get why they needed climate controlled, but I guess, I don't know if people are laying in bottled water by the pallet or what, that they can't leave it outside in the wintertime, but we've got climate controlled storage in this town now like we've never had before.
Correct.
Between Shopko building and the former Penny's location, it's amazing.
I'm going to look to you and Lois at this moment because I can't even pretend to understand that one. I can't. I mean, it's obviously growing, and you're right.
They've done the Shopko building here in Marshfield and the one in Wausau, too, on the west side.
Right. Well, you drive anywhere, you see storage, storage, storage. We drove to Stratford the other day to do some business, and on the north end of town, they're building more storage, and they have 3 or 4 buildings already. Right on 97, Kingdom Storage, which is now, of course, also in the mall. It is amazing. And, well, some people are downsizing, but they still have things that they need to put in storage. So that's what we're kind of thinking is what's happening at this point. Yeah, but it is amazing. I wish we'd have jumped on that bandwagon 10 years ago and bought a bunch of property to do storage, right?
I agree. And just for people who might be wondering, how could the city allow that Shopko building to be used for storage? Come on, it's at the main intersection of Upham and Central, and it's a retail area. It's zoned for a lot of things, and storage is part of it. Is that the highest and best use for that building? Well, that, I get what people are saying to me and probably to Lois and others, but we don't really control that. We can try and encourage certain types of development, and TJ Maxx is exciting, and I know people want to see more of that. But ultimately, as a property owner, if they can buy it and they can use it for things that are permitted uses, they do where the money is and where the market is, in their opinion, and that happens sometimes.
Yeah, that TJ Maxx, I was just blown away how that was buzzing when that place opened. I said, whoop, they must be open because you can't find a spot now.
Right.
They're in the festival parking lot, and it's on my way here, not too far from the radio station. You can see it from here, and that's why I thought, wow, that really took off. And I know there's a pent-up demand here. You can take your retailers and show them that and say, look, this place, if you want to build here and start selling stuff, depending upon what it is you've got, these kind of stores, there's a pent-up demand here.
Yeah, and I don't do a lot of shopping. Anybody who knows me is laughing as they hear me say that, because that's the understatement of all time. But when my wife heard that TJ Maxx was coming, she said that's going to be really, really popular. I mean, they've got a niche. They really have. They found a market for the type of product, the pricing of their product, and it seems to be true.
Talking with the City Administrator Steve Barg, Mayor Lois TeStrake on today's program here this first Friday in June. You can too, 384-2192, 384-2192. We'll take one last break and wrap up our discussion in a moment. WDLB's Insight program offering you an opportunity to talk with the mayor and city administrator here on this first Friday of the month, Dairy Fest weekend, if you're looking back on us on video. So we're pumped about that yet, and you have the advantage of knowing how that all came out here weather-wise. We're watching Saturday to see that if the showers hold off. It looks at this point before like we may be able to escape here before the showers come in late in the overnight, but that's always a chance you take with with outdoor events like that, and like Hub City Days, and also like the fair specifically. A lot of money tied up in acts in their grandstand that don't get to play, that still got to get paid. And that's where it really kicks the crutches out from the finances when something like that happens. So, like I said, if you're watching us, you know how this all came out already. But it's the price of doing business. I mean, you can't just sit on your hands. We've talked about that before here. As a community, we are not necessarily in competition when we talk about retail, maybe a little bit with other places where you can go within driving distance. But at for whatever it is now a gallon, as you're watching us, might be $5, that's starting to turn around too. You know, to the point where you can't afford to go driving around for shopping to Appleton or Mall of America. Those places are destinations. They've built there was a reason they put an amusement park in the middle of the Mall
Correct.
of America, because it's not just about shopping and looking in the windows anymore. That's a family day.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, it was the gas was right around $2 a gallon, and now, like you said, it's $4.50. So families are looking at a lot of things when they decide whether they're going to shop, where they're going to go for vacations, and I think people would like to be closer to home if they can, because that price is taking a big bite.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes here, but before we go, getting industry here, talking about an industrial park land, is that going to be used or zoned just for industry?
Yeah, this is land on the east side of Yellowstone Industrial Park. It's 123 acres owned by UW, and we've had a sort of an agreement with them that we could execute sometime, and we're doing it at the end of that 20-year period. But what this is going to do for us is have a big tract of land to carve up. And I'm not sure if you and I have talked about this before, Jeff, but right now we have a little bit of land left in Yellowstone, but no bigger parcels. So when that company calls, they call us, they call the Chamber of Commerce, hey, we got a great project for you guys. We need 30 acres, we need 40 acres. We just have to tell them to look elsewhere. Now we're going to be in that game. Now we can talk about what we have to offer in this community. We can talk about utilities, we can talk about workforce, we can talk about those types of things where we didn't get to first base before. So that's going to be big in terms of us trying to attract and keep larger companies like PCA. If you think back a couple of years ago, that wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't had a large tract of land to offer them.
How much do we have to invest for curb, gutter, water, sewer, stuff like that out there?
Well, we haven't really
utilities.
Yeah, a lot. We haven't looked at that yet, but I think what you'll see us do, they used to do a build it and they will come back in the 1980s. That's a long time ago. But now I think you'll probably see us develop that 123 acres as we go. So we probably will put in the infrastructure as we have developers and companies on the hook to build. We won't just put in 123 acres worth of street sewer, water, and storm sewer.
The old shovel ready isn't as ready as it used to be anymore, is it?
No, it's not. But the cost of doing that and then having a 20-year build-out is just hard to bear. So.
Yeah, that was one of the things I thought about, is that we did that in years past, and a lot of it is yet to be used, and it is what it is.
Well, not to mention, if you put the roads where you think it's going to work best, and then you find a company has a different kind of idea, and their configuration is one that they need more acreage and a different, drawing, and sorry, we put a road there, and it's already there. I guess you can't have a piece of land that looked like the one you wanted. If you do it, in piecemeal as you go along, you can accommodate their specific needs.
Yeah, and tear it up because that's not where they need it, right?
Correct.
And we just spent that money.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank both of you, and hopefully as we look back here in the video in the future, that this will be a success here for Dairy Fest. A lot of hard planning goes in all throughout the year to make sure that the people come to the community, and hopefully all of those people that come here to work during the day on the hill will stay around a little bit, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do here in Marshfield. So again, thank you both for coming in and sharing your time with us and your expertise here.
Very welcome.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Marshfield.
Here on today's Insight program, this first Friday in the month of November on WDLB. I'm Jeff Cannon.